Angle Angle podcast. Let's do take 8. Take 8. I debated whether or not I was going to do this anymore because I thought, and there are a million podcasts out there and they're all really good. And I don't know, do we really need another one? Then it occurred to me, I came across an interview one time with Stevie Nicks, one of the great voices of the great rock and roll band Fleetwood Mac. And I wasn't interviewing Stevie. I've never met Stevie. But I went to a concert recently that made me think of the interview where I saw Stevie. And the concert was at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. And the headliner was Billy Joel. And the opening act was Stevie Nicks. And as I'm watching her perform, she's 75 years old, mind you, 75. And as I'm watching her perform, I'm remembering that interview where she's talking about why she was continuing to perform. And this interview was from a few years ago. She didn't need to do it. She's made more money than she can count. And her legacy in the history of her profession is as secure as anybody else. Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac, eternity. She doesn't need to do it. And her point to the interviewer was, you know what? I'm just going to do this for me because I enjoy doing it and it's what I want to do. If someone happens to buy it, so be it. Great. If they don't, that's okay too. Well, I thought about it as related to this. If someone happens to watch it, that's great. If they don't, that's okay too. I'm doing this for me because I really enjoy interviewing people from all different walks of professions and seeing how it is that they do what they do to get to the level where they are, which is usually high up the food chain. Especially my guest for this episode, one of the foremost opera singers in the world. Please welcome Mr. Alok Kumar. Where are you by any chance? Is that just your standard Marriott hotel room, or is this your high-end apartment in New York City?
No, this is I'm actually in Fort Worth, so this is a standard Marriott room. But I mean, it's really nice. I'm happy with it. It is. Definitely. The company's awesome.
You have a very unique career, and I think it's one of those careers that most people can't even conceive what your life or even your day is like. So, Alok, take me through your day of a performance. How do you prepare and how do you spend that day leading up to the curtain going up at 7:30 at night?
So my day get up in the morning, get in a workout, try to get in a run, get in some yoga, whatever I'm on a kick about during that point in my life. And then at that point, I'm just kind of like focusing on, what's coming up in the moment, and for me, it's just, getting into the character again, trying to go back to the music. Even if it's the day of performance, I'll still kind of go back, take a look to see, what is it that, I want to focus on personally, because nothing's going to be perfect, right? So a big part of it, like any endeavor, is letting go of the fact that it is not going to be perfection. And that's the nature of live performance. And people go to it because they kind of want to, there's an energy about it. You never know what's going to happen. And you may be witnessing wonderful, great moments. You may be witnessing a train wreck. You never know. But from a performance point of view, I'm kind of just trying to focus the process so that I'm kind of, looking at a very specific goal that I want to attain through that particular performance in that moment. So my mindset leading up to that evening is essentially trying to hit those markers and see if I can make myself essentially make myself happy through the process.
But you don't necessarily do anything to protect your vocal cords and your voice throughout the day. You don't drink hot tea, you don't talk or any. I hear some extreme stories about even broadcasters or musicians as they get older, that they don't make a lot of noise throughout the day so they can have all their energy for the performance.
Correct. And I think it depends. That's, it's idiosyncratic, right? I mean, some folks are very much about, I need to be I need to be in a comfort zone for myself so that I know that I can rely on the instrument. And if that means I keep quiet for the day, I don't speak, down a lot of tea, hot water, steam, what have you, take any number of, mucus thinners I can find, whatever it is. But to most people's credit, I mean, the idea is like, if you know very well if you're under the weather, if you're not 100%, it, you feel it. And so you'll do those things to ensure that, you're going to put yourself in a better position. again, what I've kind of determined over just, and especially, I've got a almost 5 year old, and kids, as everybody knows, are germ factories, right? I mean, you just can't avoid it.
Yep.
And they'll sit there and unabashedly cough in your face, and it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter that
Right.
you're gonna go be singing this like really demanding role. And by the way, you're not going to school because we can't pay for it unless I could sing this role today. That doesn't factor into the cost. But it turns out that, I mean, for me, the way I kind of handle it is the less I focus on maybe kind of like, because it turns into a downward spiral for me. It becomes very psychosomatic.
Oh,
If I feel like, oh wow, there's something going on, a little tickle, I start to kind of clear my throat, and that just kind of goes down the wrong path. And I had stopped singing for a number of years to do something else in my life, before 2010, and when I was in school at that time, I never got sick.
of course. Yeah, you were
I
Superman,
never got
right?
exactly. I didn't
Bulletproof.
have to sing. But I
Yep.
never got sick. I go drinking. I go to parties. It doesn't matter. I go running in the snow. It did not matter. And so that was pretty instructive because, it really was, if you kind of, a lot of, there's legitimate sickness, of course, but, and you deal with that when you've got it. But, oftentimes we kind of do get in our own heads about it, and we find that we're like, oh no, it gets super precious. So, and
Is
so
what you
that's the tricky part.
is what you do healthy? And let me define that under
You
this
have to
under
specify.
well, what I mean is like when I look at what entertainers do, and for me, I'm just a random consumer, but the older you get, you see like, wow, gee whiz, I don't know if that's a really a good idea. Whether athletes, artists, sometimes I'm talking about even painters and what they do physically to their bodies. And as what you do, I'm like, you know what? Is that normal for the body to be able to do that? Like, is that a healthy thing?
Yeah,
Or are you making a trade by doing what you love, but putting your body in a position where it's kind of a sacrifice, just
yeah,
physically?
yeah. I think that's a that's an excellent question, and I think there are three parts to that actually, with regard to the health. I think physically, just kind of like turning back to the initial question, the question you had prior to that was, in terms of, how does it hurt?
Yeah.
And again, if you're doing it the right way and you're singing the correct repertoire, you're not giving over to, some of the impulses of just kind of wanting to, like, gun it all the time. Yeah, it could be an extremely healthy, measured, exciting process, because it's not hurting your throat. It may hurt you physically in a sense of, I mean, because you're taking breaths, you're managing the breath, so your abs will hurt, your legs will hurt. It's like a workout. It's like a workout. But at the same time, because of that, you'll also end up essentially, you're essentially doing physical training along the way. I mean, like I said, some people run, some people lift, a lot of people do yoga, Pilates. So they'd all in an effort to serve, getting the most efficient, balanced instrument, healthiest instrument, and you're the instrument, right? The body.
Mhm.
So you try to stave off the inevitable. Chances are you'll see many singers who kind of, their contemporaries are going to look a lot older than they do at some point in their life, just because they have a healthier lifestyle, assuming they're staying away from, the other stuff like,
Yeah.
alcohol, cigarettes, blah, blah, blah. But for me, I do feel healthier while I'm singing. When I'm on a contract and working on something, I sleep better. Score. I'm also away from
Your
my
family.
family.
I'm
So I mean,
gonna edit
maybe
this
that's not
out.
entirely fair. But I feel like for me, I do feel like I do, almost get a hint of the Benjamin Button blessing there for a little while. But the other part of it, but along with that health, it also comes the mental health,
Yeah.
and that's huge, because performance psychology is a multi-billion-dollar business and a multi-billion-dollar industry. And unfortunately, most opera singers don't contribute to those multi-billions of dollars. It's an
Yeah.
expensive endeavor, but but certainly there are mental health aspects to it as well, and especially when you start losing yourself in certain characters. If you're doing a character that is just constantly, and you're getting known for the character, and you're portraying this thing, 5, 6 times a year, and every time you go there, it's like watching a train wreck, on stage. Like in the opera Carmen, for example,
Right.
I sing the role of Don Jose, and he starts off as a relatively well-adjusted person, so it seems, and at the end, he's essentially, stabbed. Yeah, he's killed a mezzo, and you do that, X amount of performances, X amount of productions over the course of, so many, months, years, what have you. Um, if you really sink yourself into the character, you have to extricate yourself from the mindset, and it
Really.
gets tough, right? So that is a real consideration, and that's something that does end up informing the physicality as well, and the physical aspects of physical health. Because you may end up self-soothing and self-medicating for any number of reasons, and that'll kind of take its toll. So,
I was reading your bio, which is, I mean, embarrassingly impressive.
no, thank
If
you.
I read this right, in 2020 on the list was Beethoven's Ninth that you did not get to perform.
Correct.
Have you had a chance to perform that one?
I have not. It's in the
Oh, that's
works.
the
It's in.
one. I'm a
I
fan of that
know.
one.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's in discussion right now, which is great. But until contracts are signed, I can't say anything. But I was disappointed. I mean, that would have been amazing. Doing a Beethoven 9 would have been wonderful. It's not. I think the audience is a greater beneficiary of that particular work because it is so thrilling and it's such a fully integrated work, and the
Yeah.
course is such a massive aspect of it. I mean, the music is of course wonderful, but in terms of it feeling like like that compared to like a Verdi Requiem, right? Where you sing that, it's another concert work. I mean, it's operatic in scope by Verdi, but unsurprisingly, but there's certainly more highlights for all the soloists, and it's very satisfying.
One question I typically ask of guests who have very unique careers as you do is what are the popular misperceptions that the general public has about whatever it is that they do? So when you talk to people, and I'm sure for you, when you're out and about, you've got the ultimate icebreaker conversation. You're an opera singer. Wow, it's amazing. What do we as a general public get wrong about opera, opera performers, any of it?
That it's a well, a couple of things. One, that it is inaccessible, and I
Mm,
think I think
yeah,
that's I think that's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest kind of well, there's the perception that it's inaccessible. Oh, is it in English? What language is it in? Oftentimes you think opera, you think Italian, right? But there's Italian, French, German, pretty much, and then essentially done in the vernacular. So you have Russian and Czech and certainly English. But it exists in several languages. I think now, I mean, obviously now you can go to the opera and essentially, and I'll then explain, well, there's super titles or subtitles in some cases. So while you're watching the opera, you can kind of follow
yeah.
along. Um, and usually folks will, if they come, they'll say, okay, great, I'll catch it. And my thing is when I find out that someone has come to an opera for the first time, my next question is, well, that's great. Did you enjoy? They're like, invariably it's a yes. And then the question is, are you going to come back? And so far it has been a yes, which is great. That's success. And then I asked why. I was like, did you read up on it before? Did you have a chance to, study it and stuff? Yeah. And sometimes it'll range from no, I didn't, I went out drinking before the opera and I got here and loved it. And then you got folks who are like, no, I took some time and I looked at the libretto. I studied this. I was like, wow, you probably did more work than many of the singers do, but okay, great. And they'll show up and they'll really soak it in. But ultimately, it's not even about that. They'll be transfixed if it's compelling enough. It is if it's performed compellingly enough, really is what it is. The music will transcend any linguistic barrier, what have you. And if it's well written, and the masters are masters for a reason. I mean, Bohème is Bohème for a reason. It is. It's been spun as the quintessential date night movie. It's been spun as like the quintessential love story with opera and whatnot. And it's all those, but more than anything, and maybe this might kind of really illustrate the power of this music. I'd gone to I'd gone and worked this with a vocal coach, a few vocal coaches, and most recently about a week ago. And the gentleman that I worked with, he stopped at the end of the thing, and he was sobbing, crying. We just the two of us going through the opera, right? Just singing through it. Get to the end, he's crying. Hadn't seen this guy. He's the most stoic person I had met to date. I see tears. I was like, tell me this is not a medical issue because I have no training. No, he's crying. And he said, through his tears, he said, the first time I ever conducted La Boheme was in 1972.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's been doing, and Boehm is a mainstay, and he's been at large companies for a very long time. And so they do that in the repertoire constantly. So I would be safe to venture he's probably done it at least 250, 300 times. And to see him get to the end of that and just with a piano and me and in a room working through this thing and sobbing, that was pretty informative. Right? That's the power of the music. It is it takes away experience, it cuts through experience, it cuts through the jaded nature of humanity as we get older. And it gets through all of that, and it just gets to the heart of the matter, and it makes you remember, or at least, longingly, or maybe miserably, or whatever way. But that's the power of opera. That's the power of music. That's the power of art. But opera, being amongst the highest forms of art, has that power. And to be at a live theater, to go watch it, as opposed to listening to it in a recording, which in and of itself can be wonderful, but to go catch that live
Yeah.
and see all of that, it's compelling, and it's incredibly accessible.
So you led me into a question I had further down, but this is something that has been on my mind for several months. I took my daughter to see Taylor Swift, the big show, right? The 3 hour, 44 song thing. And, as a performer or as a fan, you're in awe of the fact that she has the stamina to stand up there and do a 3 hour, very active performance.
Yeah.
And then this bug was in my head, and I thought, was what I was watching real or Memorex, so to speak? That's an old person's. Yeah, but I don't know if you and your friends discuss this at all, Alok, but with auto tone now being so good and production being so good and advanced and artificial intelligence, I do think there's a lot of us who watch and consume performances, even if it's live right in front of us or if it's on our phone.
Yeah,
We wonder, is that real?
exactly.
Do you have those concerns, and should we as an audience?
Yeah, I think that's legitimate, and I think that way too. I mean, like,
Do
I
you?
will watch or listen to anything, and I'll be like, you take it with a grain of salt, because and so that the calculus, the algorithm that goes through my head on a daily basis for everything is essentially, certainly for news products. But
Oh, God, no
but
doubt.
you're right. I mean, so where do where can I get, essentially the baseline facts of what's happening, so that I can kind of trust that that is reality, and then I can, go from there. And that's certainly a thing in entertainment as well. With opera, it has been in a live performance. There have been questions that come up, of course, is like, was so and so at the Metropolitan Opera, was this great singer potentially mic'd? Did they hide a body mic in the wig or something like that?
Really?
Because, and were they enhanced just a bit more because, clearly they're it just sounded different, or what have you? Those questions have been coming up even in, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Um, Nowadays, it's just, I think it's the doubt is that much greater. I think those opportunities where I have a chance to go to a donor event, which, when I take contracts, I will oftentimes volunteer. I'll say, listen, I mean, your donors are a big part of your base.
Yeah.
They're excited about things, and they have these events, and sometimes, it's great, and it's a lot of fun for them to meet the artists who are coming to town, right? And so they'll have a wine dinner or something like that. And then, they may ask certain artists if they'd be interested in, singing a couple pieces and meeting the donors. I love it. I'm an absolute, in fact, I love the donor events more than I enjoy performing sometimes, you know. But the reason why I do is because I love the connection, and I love asking them how it is they got into opera. I mean, like, I got into it because I sing, I'm interested in it. You guys don't sing, you don't play any instruments, what makes you interested in going to the opera? And oftentimes they'll say, well, it's these kinds of events. When we hear someone come into the room, they're standing right in front of
Yeah.
us, and that the wall of sound is coming at us or ringing in our ears 10 feet away. And it is so shocking that, it kind of, I'd imagine those environments kind of dispel any sense of, hey, is that voice, AI, enhanced or what have you. And so when you hear the authenticity of a sound 10 feet away from you, and then you hear it on stage, 2 weeks later, and you don't hear much of a difference, or any
Mhm.
difference other than maybe acoustic, I think that kind of helps to create that understanding that this particular art form is not as, manipulated as much of anything else is.
When you go see something, can you watch it and just enjoy it? Talking about
You talk
somebody
about
else,
opera,
any of it,
anyway,
concert, Broadway, play, movie. Well, forget movies. I'm talking about live performances.
live
As a live
performances.
performer yourself, can you go and actually enjoy it, or is your critical ear automatically on unintentionally?
Yeah. So the critical ear is on if it's classical singing.
Okay.
So if I'm listening to classical singers, I will certainly, I mean, I'm also, I'm not gonna, I don't want people to fail. I mean, like if I see people on stage and they're working, I mean, like, I'm very empathetic toward what's going on and what they're dealing with and if they're having a rough time with, certain things, and I can hear that, even though it's, maybe 3, 4% of the audience can hear it, the rest of them not so much. Um, you know, I'll hear it, turn it off, because ultimately it's still about, I want to be entertained, right?
Hmm.
And if I'm being entertained, if I see a full performance, an integrated performance, and the person is selling it, um, I stop listening for the what I consider to be imperfections or what have you, and I actually focus on the performance. So yeah, I think there's a higher standard for what I would expect. Um, but once that's met, I'll buy anything. Um,
Really?
once that's but the re is like I mean like and I but I want to in live theater, I want to see the human condition represented fully and invested in completely. That's the job description. That's why we go watch it. I used to watch a lot of blockbusters when I was starting to date my wife. I was like, yeah, let's go watch this movie, and it's a blockbuster. We don't have to think about things.
Yeah, right.
She was more into catching, like, the indie flicks, right? And then we go to an indie flick. I'd be like, all right, fine, I'm not big into this. We go to the indie flick, pay money for it, what have you. We go home and we'd have an argument about the indie flick. I was just like, why am I paying money to have an argument? We can have our argument for free. But
Oh,
but the thing is,
sorry.
right, it would end up like essentially, but it would end up engendering conversation, right? And like discussion, debate, and growth and stuff like that. And now that's kind of like, but it's the human condition. And now, soon thereafter, I was like, let's go catch that indie flick, because you get hungry for that. And so, as a consumer of art, I think that's kind of what you kind of go for. You want to go to see things that are going to move you and challenge you and make you think. And that's essentially the job description.
You mentioned at the top that when you do one of these performances, there could be a train wreck, to be a screw up in your career. Have you had a moment on stage where like, I cannot believe we just screwed that up, or I just screwed that up?
Couple, couple, yeah. And there's always a running
Give me
tally of things
one.
like. Well, let me see. I don't know if I want to share this just now. It's so fresh.
Oh, this is like
Well,
just recently?
yeah, so I was in Scotland recently, and I was doing a couple of concerts with the Scottish Opera Orchestra, and it's no secret, because I mean the conductor and I knew that already. We knew what was happening, and it was in a concert setting, so I mean everyone's in tuxes and dress and what have you, and we're doing a few opera scenes, and in one of the duets, just forgot to come in. I forgot to come in, and it was a pretty exposed thing, and the duet's pretty well known. And the conductor, he couldn't stop the orchestra because they had to keep going. And I'm standing right by him, and all of a sudden I hear him, whisper rather loudly what I was supposed to have sung. And then of course, every part of me is like, you don't want to, you don't want to show your tell,
Right.
essentially. And so I didn't, and that's the hard part, right? Is kind of like, practicing, essentially just making sure nothing went wrong, making it look like nothing went wrong. And then you just pick up from where you were and go. And after the fact, a few people noticed it, especially in the amongst the musicians. But the folks who went to the opera, who were at the audience,
No idea.
in and out, didn't matter, because they were so like, they were just kind of, they thought it was a moment,
Yeah.
because I didn't, because I didn't have a towel. I just kind of, I sat there, and I just, once it happened, I was like, all right, move on. So that's the tough part. But I mean, those things, but they happen constantly. I mean, like, and it's not nothing for me, fortunately, so far, nothing has been huge. But there are those moments that you kind of keep a running tally of, oh, that wasn't ideal, that wasn't ideal, wasn't ideal. And my process, actually, ongoing process, is to kind of keep the tally and then leave it for later on, after I'm off stage, after the night is done, then kind of go back and revisit it. Because if I'm kind of checking in with that through the performance, it's not a performance, right?
One more question, then I'll move on to some fun ones.
Yeah, sure.
You
Oh,
have a
these are all fun.
child.
What's
You
that?
have a child.
I did.
He's
Yeah.
5, correct?
She's 5. Yeah.
She's 5.
Yep.
Knowing what you know about the industry, because
Yeah.
this is industry, let's say she's 15 or 18 years old and she says, boy, I really want to do what you do, Daddy.
Yeah.
Do you say yes or no?
you know she's actually she started singing already, and she kind of imitates, because my wife's also a singer. I
Oh,
mean, she
okay.
doesn't sing professionally, but
She's pretty good.
she's a technician. She's outstanding. But she's also, she and I work together a lot, technically, my wife and I. And so our daughter kind of started picking up a few, replicating some sounds. And then my wife, just to keep it fun, but at the same time making sure she wouldn't hurt herself, would like show her a couple of things. And our daughter just kind of glommed onto that and started like creating these, pretty nice sounds. And so when she does these things, you know, my wife and I look at each other and we're like, it's pretty good, but we're like, just don't encourage her. Do not encourage that at all.
We don't need
But
another one of these.
we don't need to, foist that curse upon her yet. But no, it's but I mean, like, it's one of these things where, I mean, that's really a wonderful question. And I even, I folks will ask me who are kind of considering careers in,
Yeah.
music and classical music, like, what do you do and how do you do it and stuff. And yeah, I mean, given the way the industry looks right now, it's, fees are generally, I mean, they've, like many industries, I mean, they're kind of stagnating,
Mhm.
and what would have been a really wonderful fee, 10, 15, 20 years ago doesn't quite, yeah, it doesn't, all the other expenses are going up, a lot faster. So, um, the question is, yeah, I mean, like, I would probably say, follow it, try it, do it, go for it. It's going to require adherence to like a work ethic and a drive that's going to
Mhm.
have to, kind of take you through it. But see what you can glean from it, I think, is the biggest thing, because there are aspects that you pick up from the art form that you learn about yourself. I mean, there's a comfort with performance that I have. Um, Not even just because of the art form, but as a result of like living in it, that I was able to kind of take into when I went to law school. I
Wow.
trial work was just, that's what I wanted to do, right? And I
Trial
loved
work
it.
to Puccini.
I mean, really,
I did
it's
not see that episode of Law and Order. Did
yeah.
you?
We may be able to pitch that actually.
It's coming. Dick
To
Wolf
see
is going
what
to throw that out
see
in a
if Dick
couple of
Wolf is
years.
looking for ideas. But yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things that it's portable. The things that you
Yeah.
can glean from anything, so long as. But a big part of it is passion. What do you have to say? What does it say about you? What do you say about it? And what do you have to say about about things through it? So it's about passion and communication.
Okay.
So yeah, the answer would be yes. Go for it.
I'm usually a yes on that, but
Yeah,
I've got like 50 qualifications
of
that if
course.
she gets through about half of it, then she's probably interested in it.
Right,
But
right.
ideally, I'm kind of like you. I'm like, there's not a lot of money in this.
Yeah.
You know, go drill an oil well someplace out in West Texas and make us some money, and then I can retire. But you do what you want, honey. I love you. Okay.
Yep.
Um, are you familiar? You're smart, educated. Are you
Mm.
familiar with the Proust questionnaire, Olak?
I've heard of it. I have not actually
Okay.
been.
These are
Yeah.
a lot of fun, soul
Okay,
probing questions.
let's do it.
Let's ask you a few of them.
Yeah.
What is your greatest fear?
Loss.
Oh, good answer. What is your perfect idea of happiness?
Family.
Oh, very good. Hopefully, your wife watches this. What is the trait that you admire the most about yourself? Ew, that's a hard one.
That's a tough one. I
I
don't think I've
know.
gotten to enough therapy sessions to start broaching this one.
You have good hair. You have
I,
really
I
good
would
hair.
say, I'd say, really, I would say that the only one that really comes to mind that I feel is honest is resilience.
Resilience. To do what you do, that's a good answer. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's resilience.
What is your greatest extravagance? If you got $100, $1,000, what will you silly blow it on yourself for?
I mean, I do it on a watch.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
A watch? Even in this era of cell phones where we know the time, the
I
watch is your thing.
The watch is my thing because I'm enamored of the detail and precision in the watch.
Are you
It's a
talking about
work of
all of it? Like when you take it apart and you see all the little pieces and
yeah,
all
yeah.
that?
And I don't do that, but to know I can YouTube that. But to understand that that degree of engineering is sitting on my wrist,
Mm,
and that there's an aesthetic that's tied to that appeals to me, that's like that's I mean, that's perfection.
great
And
answer.
it's got to keep good time, so Rolex is out.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good one. That's a lame way to get a sponsor endorsement, by the way. On what occasion do you lie?
Oh, my wife's not watching.
She's not. Trust me.
No, no.
I'll
It's
send it to her.
I lie to protect my assumption that the truth might hurt somebody coming from me.
What a great answer.
Right. I mean, it's a
Yes.
very backward way of
Yep.
saying I lie to protect my own sense of bringing happiness to others
Yep.
and my sense of feeling like I'm a positive influence or a positive presence in someone's life. And that if I were to tell the truth and the truth were to hurt this person, then I would no longer be the positive aspect in their life. And so I
Um,
lie.
I
It's
sadly
messed
can.
up.
No, I don't. You're not alone. I think a lot of people
Right.
do that. I don't think people. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people lie to protect the other person, and unintentionally they hurt them in the process.
Of course. Yeah.
I've been guilty of it. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would that be?
Probably that.
Yeah.
The
No.
ability to really just kind of get to because I mean, I have people in my not too many, but fortunately, my wife is very honest and incisively honest, and fairly honest, which is great. And to have that as like, wow, I would really love to have a lot of that as a part of how I kind of handle, the world. So yeah, if there's one thing I would change, I think that would help me take some of the anxiety
Yeah.
off having to
Like
go
just
through
in
that
basic
calculation.
conversations.
Yeah, just, yeah, right.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
uh, Persisting. I think persisting with this career, and the fact that I am kind of I'm in some way pursuing two careers, both of which I've invested in educational expense in. Right.
Who
I
are
went to
your,
school for music. I went to school for law, and that's what I'm doing.
I guess, very, very standard combination. You know what I mean? Everybody does that. How
Everyone does it.
trite. Okay, last question. And I'm looking at all these, so trying to think of the good one to go with. I asked this once of a professional tennis player, and it
Okay.
really alienated her. It's too bad too, because the interview had been great until this one just went
Yeah.
straight in the toilet. And I shouldn't do
Let's
it, but
hear
I'm like, no, you can identify with it. We've only got a few seconds left. How
it.
do you want to die?
With my family around me. That's it.
Great answer. I
Yeah.
can't thank you enough. This was a fascinating interview. I really appreciate your time. Wish you and your family great health, and you certainly all the professional success in the world. Thanks so much for today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it too, Mac. Thank you
Okay,
so much for
take
having me.
care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.